Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Deadly Web, a police procedural novel, by Mike Omer, narrated by Eric Martin. Chapter 1. If there was one single reason to be a man, it was the ability to pee in a bottle. Not for the first time, Detective Hannah Shore marveled at the fact that it was 2016 and women were still not much closer to peeing in bottles than they had been in the Middle Ages. Humankind had made amazing progress in the last 100 years. They had invented TVs, microwaves, air conditioners, the internet, dating apps, yet it was still better to be male on a stakeout, because you could urinate whenever you wanted. She shifted a bit, trying to find a position that didn't feel as if she were sitting on top of her bladder. Crunch. She glanced at Bernard, who was slowly eating another potato chip. Hunched over the steering wheel, staring lazily in front of him, Bernard didn't appear to be in any discomfort. For all she knew, he was happy to sit out here in the cold, eating potato chips, a modern toilet nothing more than a faraway dream. His dark-skinned hand drew another potato chip from the bag. The way he relished them, Hannah wondered how he managed to stay so fit. Fast metabolism, probably. That was what all thin people said when explaining the way they looked. I can't help it, I just have fast metabolism, as if it was a medical condition that ailed them. Crunch. She scanned the street again. Not the most inspiring place to be, definitely not after midnight. There was a single streetlight illuminating their surroundings. The buildings were all constructed of cheap red bricks, unpainted, left to wear down and crumble in neglect. Numerous pipes, wires, and rusty emergency stairs decorated the structures, intertwining with each other, creating a maze with no clear entrance or exit. The ground was covered with small puddles and streams, with nowhere to drain to. Dozens of mud-spattered vehicles were parked around the patrol car, some of them looking as if they hadn't moved for years. The alleyway on the other side of the street was even dirtier, with overflowing garbage cans and empty, greasy food wrappers tossed here and there, slowly flapping in the slight wind. Someone incredibly clever had walked down the street recently and used his finger to draw a penis on each dirty car window. His art lacked merit, and Hannah was pretty sure she could have done a better job at it. She was beginning to suspect this was another failure. There would be no crack changing hands here tonight, no arrests to be made, no action to be had, just full bladders, tension, and crunch. She practically jumped at the sound. How the hell was she supposed to concentrate on this stakeout with that noise constantly invading her thoughts? It was probably the vilest, most annoying sound in the world. At least the way Bernard did it, as if he was making some sort of statement, as if part of the joy of the potato chip was crushing it as loud as you could between your crunch. Bernard! What? He tensed, looking around, searching the street for whatever had made her call his name. Eat another potato chip, and I'll cram that entire bag up your ass. Bernard blinked. Do you want a potato chip? No. Okay. He mulled that over. They're really good. The creamy garlic Caesar. I really like the garlic tinge. I don't want any potato chips. I just can't stand the sound you're making when you eat them. It's not me making the sound. It's the potato chips. The crunching is the very nature of the potato chip. It is the sound of its existence. The potato chip was born to— Shut up, Hannah interrupted him. There he is. They both hushed, looking ahead. A heavy man, wearing an overcoat and a knit cap, walked down the street, his hands in his pockets. Hannah inspected him carefully, searching for a bulge in his pants or under the coat. Was he armed? It didn't seem so. He didn't have the usual stride of a wary, experienced drug dealer either. I don't know, Hannah whispered. He doesn't look exactly like the man G.D. described, does he? Bernard shrugged. G.D. is a moron. It's a wonder he could describe anything at all. He was so high when we talked to him. What reason would anyone have to walk around in this neighborhood at this time of night? The man stopped walking and looked around. Hannah and Bernard didn't move. Their unmarked Dodge Charger was one of many cars parked by the sidewalk, the interior completely dark. The two detectives were, for all intent and purpose, invisible. The man entered the alley, leaned against one of the walls, and lit a cigarette. "There, you see?" Bernard grinned. "We can book 'em already. Loitering." "Don't be an idiot," Hannah said. Her heart beat faster. She needed this arrest. She constantly felt as if she was on borrowed time, as if Chief Dougherty and Captain Bailey were wondering if she was worth her salary. It had gotten worse after her screw-up the month before. She had mistakenly given a reporter confidential intel, exposing the bait they were using to draw out a serial killer. That mistake haunted her constantly, making her doubt her own worth in the squad. Now she was trying to remind herself and her superiors why she'd been promoted to detective in the first place. "Relax," Bernard said, calm as always. "We'll have something real to book 'em for in a moment." "Yeah." Hannah shifted again. She wished a buyer would get there already. Her existence was slowly becoming one big, incredibly sensitive bladder. The two detectives stared outside in silence. The man smoked the cigarette slowly, calmly. Hannah suddenly yearned for a cigarette. She'd quit smoking 3 years before, but she still craved a smoke when she ate a large meal or had sex or whenever she was tense, and she was tense as hell. Her desire to pee wasn't helping, but the hell with peeing, she'd stay there until dawn if it meant. A movement caught her eye. She touched Bernard's arm, pointing. The man approached the alley wearing dirty, torn clothes. His motions were twitchy, his feet not so much pacing as jerking. As he passed by their car, Hannah could see several black marks on his dry lips. Hannah had seen junkies who managed to maintain a perfect lifestyle, working a stable job, having a happy family. Junkies, she knew, came in all shapes and forms. This one came in the form of someone who looked and acted like a junkie. He approached the man in the alley and said something. The man in the alley nodded. The junkie handed him a crumpled bill he'd been holding in his clenched fist. The other guy took the money, stuck his hand deep into his pocket, and pulled out a small, dark object. He fiddled with it for a while, then handed something tiny to the junkie. "Let's go," Hannah whispered. They opened their car doors at the same moment, the latches making small, barely audible clicks. But that was enough. Both the drug dealer and the junkie turned their heads, took one look at the two detectives, and bolted. Bernard pulled his gun, screaming, "Stop! Police!" They ran in opposite directions, the dealer into the alley, the junkie down the street. Hannah ignored the junkie, focused on the dealer. This was their man. She drew her gun and dashed after him, hearing Bernard shout into his portable radio, reporting the chase. The street wasn't wide, and it took Hannah only a second to cross it, but by that time the dealer was already halfway across the dark alley. Hannah's reflexes took over as she looked ahead, noticing possible dangers. No light in the tight space. An accomplice could be waiting there. The alleyway was narrow, no room to maneuver. Several doors dotted the walls, possible escape routes for the criminal. She didn't even slow down as she plunged inside, knowing Bernard was backing her up. The high walls closed around her. The dealer shoved a large trash can backward, and it fell down and rolled, making a loud echoing noise that reverberated in the narrow space. Hannah jumped over it and landed, almost slipping on a piece of trash. She gained her footing and kept on running. She heard Bernard cursing behind her, had no time to look back. Had he tripped over the can, hurt himself? Was he simply cursing because their man was getting away? Hannah pushed the thoughts aside as the dealer reached the end of the alley, turned right, and disappeared from sight. Stupid to let him have the upper hand. They should have planned the ambush better, perhaps had another car waiting at the other end of the alley. But who knew the info they had would actually pan out? GD was not a reliable snitch. He usually gave them half-baked theories, rumors heard in loud bars, and even ideas he cooked in his own fried, mostly dead brain. But this time, the intel had been good, and now they were losing their man. She reached the end of the alley, turned right, and felt a small wave of relief when she spotted her man running. They hadn't lost him yet. Even better, he seemed to be getting tired. He was fat and out of shape. Hannah was gaining fast. Though she was short, she kept fit. She trained almost daily and ran dozens of miles every week. Her feet were a blur on the black pavement, her body hunched forward, her entire focus pinpointed on the perp's back. She shouted, "Police! Get down on the ground, now!" The dealer was breathing hard, stumbling. This would not be a foot chase for the ages. No jumping on the top of a speeding train. No running through a crowded marketplace, knocking down a fruit stall, apples rolling everywhere. Just a short dash, a couple of 100 feet, no more. As she repeated her order to stop, Hannah braced for impact, crashed into him with her right shoulder, knocking him down. He screamed in surprise and pain, a high-pitched scream, more fitting for a 12-year-old Girl Scout than a 20-something drug dealer. Hannah trained her pistol on him. "Hands over your head, now!" Okay, he yelled. "Don't shoot! I'm putting my hands over my head, okay? Shit!" Bernard joined Hannah, his pistol in his hand as well, both of them looking intently at the man as he slowly put his hands over his head. Bernard cuffed him roughly, pulling him to his feet. "The junkie?" Hannah asked, short of breath. Bernard shook his head. It didn't matter. They had their man. As Bernard patted him down for concealed weapons, he found a small canister in the man's pocket and opened it. He poured its contents into his open palm. 14 round pellets, their aluminum wrappers shining in the light of the street lamp. Hannah drew a long breath as she stared at the drug dealer and his merchandise, and realized she still really, really needed to pee. "I'm just saying, you didn't have to be so violent, okay? That's police brutality, that is. I could sue you, I could—" "Devon," Bernard barked. "Shut the hell up, okay? We wouldn't have had to knock you down if you hadn't run away. Detective Shore here is usually very delicate when arresting drug dealers." "I'm not a drug dealer," the perp said. He was sitting in the back seat. Unfortunately, the protective screen between him and the detectives in front did not mute all sound from the rear. "You had 14 rocks of crack on you. We saw you selling one to a client," Bernard said. "I was just showing them off, you know. I never intended to sell them. And stop calling me Devon." "Of course you weren't," Bernard said. "I'm sure you show your crack cocaine to everyone. Me? I show people pictures of my kids, but I guess different people like to show different things, right?" "Well, yeah, there's nothing illegal about showing stuff, right?" Bernard glanced at Hannah. She drove serenely, a small smile on her face. It was nice to see her smile. It happened so rarely these days. She was constantly exhausted, constantly angry. Her green eyes momentarily gleamed as a car drove past them, its headlights lighting up her face. She was so pale. Was she even eating? Her brown hair seemed frazzled, unkempt. He felt the concern gnawing at him. "Great to see you smiling for once," he said, trying to sound casual. "You know what's great?" she asked, grinning. "Public toilets. Don't you think they're wonderful?" "Sure, they're awesome. You were in there for like 10 minutes. I was sure you'd drowned." Bernard looked out the passenger window at the empty street. There really wasn't any good reason to be anywhere but home so late at night. It was freezing outside. Come to think of it, it was freezing inside the car as well, and it wasn't even winter yet. A night like this one, a guy should be under the covers with his wife, not driving around in a car with a drug dealer. The only reason Bernard had agreed to this stakeout in the first place was because it was so important to his partner. Hannah had always been intense, and the vast distance between the pace of their work was sometimes hard to bridge. It had gotten worse the month before, after the whole Javon Stokes affair. Bernard had tried to tell Hannah repeatedly that she couldn't blame herself. Just like the rest of the women in his life, talking to her had little effect. He saw how on edge she'd been since that day, always trying to push her own boundaries, working 80 hours a week, driving herself to exhaustion. He would have to intervene if this kept going. "I feel like I'm going to be sick," the dealer said. Bernard looked at the man. Pudgy black face, head covered in an uneven stubble, a small mole on his chin. An ugly dude, Bernard thought. Bernard himself was quite handsome. High, wide shoulders, dark-skinned, with an immaculate short beard and thick black hair. When he'd been a child, everyone let him know he would be bald when he grew up. His father was bald, his uncles were bald, both his grandfathers were bald. The knowledge of his incoming baldness had niggled at him constantly. But he grew up, and the hair clung to his head. The fact that the baldness prophecy had never come true seemed to infuriate his family, and they kept telling him that one day he would wake up to find all of his hair scattered on the pillow. He seriously doubted it. "We're getting to the station," he told the man. "You can throw up in the holding cell." "Hey," the dealer said, "are those garlic Caesar potato chips?" He pointed at the small bag on the floor. "Yeah," Bernard answered. "They're really good." "That they are, Devon." "Can I have some?" "No, Devon, you cannot." "Why the hell do you keep calling me Devon?" "Because that's your name." "My name is Mikey." "Don't bullshit us. You're Devon Durkins. We know who you are." "Devon Durkins? That's my mate," the man said, sounding surprised. "Hang on. You thought I was Devon Durkins? You got the wrong guy. Devon's got the flu. He asked me to cover for... Well, never mind. You've got the wrong guy. Let me go." Hannah and Bernard exchanged looks. That could complicate things. Bernard saw how Hannah gritted her teeth, noticed the angry glint in her eye. He sighed. "Listen, Mikey," he said. "I don't care. You were caught with 14 rocks of crack. So you were doing it as a favor for a friend? I guess there's a lesson here, right? About friendship and crack, and how you shouldn't mix the two. But you got the wrong guy. Don't worry, we aren't picky." They drove to the police station, not to the local jail. Mikey should probably go to jail as soon as possible, but the jail was located on the very edge of town, which would mean they'd have to drive there at night to book him, then drive there again in the morning to interview him. The detectives weren't keen for this double trip, so they decided to put him in a station holding cell, interview him in the morning, and have the sheriff's staff pick him up later and transport him to jail. They parked the car in the station's parking lot and got Mikey out of the back seat, then escorted him into the station and walked straight to the elevators. "Can we take the stairs?" Mikey asked. Bernard and Hannah ignored him. "I get nervous in elevators. Once I was stuck in one for hours." "Tough shit," Hannah said, her voice sharp. "It's a good workout using the stairs," Mikey said. "Yeah," Bernard replied. "You look like you're really concerned about a workout." They got into the elevator and took him down to the cells. The sharp neon light illuminated the sad space where drunkards, prostitutes, gang members, and worse spent some of their nights, waiting for their fate to be determined. Some of them would find their way to jail. Some would be released when the sun came up. It wasn't a nice place to be, by any means, but tonight it was relatively empty. Richie sat behind the counter, staring at the consoles, sipping coffee. Bernard felt as if he hadn't drunk coffee for weeks. The mug was steaming hot. Being hot was another thing Bernard felt like he hadn't been for weeks. Richie had a thick blonde mustache which hid the top of his mouth completely. It almost seemed as if he wasn't drinking the coffee so much as letting his mustache soak in it. "Hey," Richie said. "What you got there?" "This is Mikey," Bernard answered. "We caught him with some crack." "Huh. Okay. Only one guy in the holding cells. Lucky fellow will even have a bed to sleep on." Richie stood up and led the way to the large cell's iron door. "Mikey, is that you?" someone called from inside the cell. Mikey looked pleased. "Rufus! Well, that's funny meeting you here." Funny, Bernard thought. Absolutely hilarious. Richie fiddled with the lock. It was kind of wonky, always took a few seconds to unlock. "What are you here for, Mikey?" "Cops here thought I was Devon." Devin Durkins? What are they, fucking stupid? You ain't Devin Durkins. I know, I told them. You don't even look like him. I mean, Devin's taller and his hair's brown. I know, man, I told them. And he has that tattoo. You don't have a fucking tattoo. I know, Rufus, they have the wrong guy. How is Devin? Haven't seen him for a while. He has the flu. Got it real bad, man. Oh, that sucks. My sister had the flu last week. Richie opened the door. Hannah pushed Mikey inside, a bit too roughly. As they walked away, they heard the happy reunion commence again. What are you in for, Rufus? I hit someone in a pub. Yeah? They arrested you for that? You know how those cocksuckers are. If they ain't filling their cells, they feel empty inside. The detectives went up the elevator. Damn it, Hannah said, thumping the elevator's wall. This is exactly the kind of screw-up we don't need. Bernard shrugged. We got the guy. We got a guy, not the guy, Hannah said. Damn GD. He said that Devin Durkins would be there tonight selling crack. He said that Devin was always there on Tuesday night, that this was his spot, that it was a sure thing. Well, you know, even drug dealers take a sick day sometimes. We have a guy who had 14 rocks on him. Who cares what his name is? I do. This is the guy we have? Mikey? I don't want a Mikey. Does this guy know who the supplier is? Probably not. He probably got the stuff from Devin. Damn it. The elevator doors opened, and they got out. You know, Hannah said, still fuming, I bet his lawyer will use this in court somehow. There's probably a Latin phrase for it. Your Honor, this is a clear case of arrestum micus instedum devinum. Fuck. Chill, Hannah, Bernard said, his voice firm. He stopped in the hallway, looked at her. She turned to face him, and he could see it all in her eyes. Anger, desperation, exhaustion. We got the guy, he said, his voice softening. We got a dealer off the streets. Her shoulders slumped. Yeah, she said, her voice barely a whisper. He could see a tear starting to form, and she turned around quickly and marched into the detective squad. He followed her, pretending as if he hadn't noticed. The squad room was a medium-sized open space with 4 wooden desks, one for each of the detectives. 2 whiteboards stood on opposite sides of the room. When a complex case presented itself, the detectives would use the whiteboards to draw the timeline, list the suspects and their connections to the case, and brainstorm ideas. When there was no major case, the whiteboards were used to list random bits of information, draw sketches of cartoon animals, and leave each other messages. One whiteboard was currently empty. The other had the words, "Jacob, your wife called," scrawled on it. A filing cabinet stood on the far side of the room, the squad's precious coffee maker on it. Next to the filing cabinet was the door to Captain Bailey's office. The entire detective squad consisted of only 4 detectives and the captain. Unlike most squads, there was no sergeant or lieutenant. The chief thought it was beneficial for the captain to work closely with his detectives, with no middle management layers. Bernard secretly thought she was wrong, though he knew that Captain Bailey was happy with this arrangement. Bernard was a strong believer in management hierarchy. As it was, Fred Bailey was spread too thin, and sometimes this prevented cases from moving forward. Bernard yawned as he watched Hannah sit down in her chair and turn on her monitor. He'd let her do the initial report. If he left for home right now, he had 5 hours of sleep to look forward to. Hey, Hannah, I'm taking off, okay? Yeah. Her phone rang. Hang on. Bernard winced. It wasn't fair. He was just about to go home. Hannah picked up the phone. Detective Shore, she said. Then, oh, hey, Candace. Candace was one of the police dispatchers. Bernard felt his shoulders tense. Hannah listened for a while, then mouthed the word murder at Bernard. No, he whispered. Tell her we can't. Tell her that we just finished with a stakeout and we haven't slept yet. Uh-huh, Hannah said, writing something on a pad in front of her. Trainer Road, uh-huh. "Tell her to wake up Jacob," Bernard whispered frantically. "Rory was up all night yesterday. I'm exhausted. I can't go to another—" "Yeah, sure. We're on our way." Bernard groaned as Hannah hung up. "Jacob already took the last 2 murders," Hannah told him brusquely. "This one's ours." Bernard shut his eyes, hating his partner for a second. Mikey would be going to sleep on the little cot in his cell right about now. No murder case keeping him out of his bed. No children waking him up crying every 20 minutes. Being an incarcerated drug dealer sounded like paradise. Chapter 2. The address Candace had given Hannah was a building on Trainer Road. Hannah knew the neighborhood. It was a popular place for young people looking for reasonably cheap apartments close to the city's hub. Although the buildings seemed old and dirty, it wasn't a bad neighborhood, and crime there was not as frequent as people thought. As they got closer to the crime scene, Hannah slowed the car down. Her eyes began to scan the surroundings, looking for anything out of the ordinary. She fought the urge to accelerate and get there as fast as they possibly could. The murderer could be fleeing the scene right now, hiding behind that billboard or the tree on the corner. Even if he was long gone, she wanted to get a mental image of the area. Were there security cameras on the street? Perhaps an all-night drugstore whose clerk might have seen something? The streets were completely empty. It was 1 a.m. on a Wednesday, and most of the city's drunk or homeless didn't hang out in this neighborhood. The windows around them were dark. Only she and Bernard traversed the empty street, on their way to meet a dead man. "Jacob would have been happy to investigate this murder," Bernard muttered. "I mean, he has nothing better to do. He would have jumped from his bed like lightning at the thought of a dead man waiting for investigation. But no, Detective Hannah Shore didn't want his precious sleep to be interrupted, because God forbid Jacob's sleep be terminated before dawn." Hannah didn't answer. Bernard was in a grumpy mood, but she knew it would soon dissipate. He was tired. He had 3 small children, and he rarely slept for more than 2 hours straight. Does he ever regret having children? She wondered. He certainly complained about them a lot. She parked next to a patrol car, in front of a 4-story building whose front wall was sprayed with graffiti. It was an odd mix of artistic signatures, obviously drawn with care and thought, intermingled with a black-sprayed sentence that read, "Fuck Dan Smith." Either the spray can had run out in the middle of the composition, or the subject really was named Dan Smith. Officer Tanessa Lonnie was waiting for them at the building's entrance, sipping from a steamy mug. Someone here was hospitable. Hannah hoped whoever had supplied the beverage would be happy to make more. The detectives got out of the car, Bernard slamming the door much louder than usual. They both approached Tanessa. "Hey, Tanessa," Hannah said warmly. "Hey, Hannah," Tanessa said, her perfect face remaining serious. How could someone look so amazing in a patrol officer uniform? Back when Hannah had been in uniform, her body had looked like a dressed-up potato. Looking good wearing the vest, the patrol officer's gear belt, and the uninspiring uniform seemed impossible, yet Tanessa somehow pulled it off. Like all the Lonnie siblings, she was smashing. Her hair was brown like Hannah's, but that was where the similarity ended. While Hannah's hair was always a bit lackluster, Tanessa's hair was long, rich, and gleaming. It always looked as if it should be in a shampoo commercial. Her skin was a cool, smooth white, emphasizing her constantly smiling rose-red lips, and her eyes, almond-shaped, sparkling green, eyes that would have sunk ships thousands of years ago. Tanessa had returned from sick leave 2 weeks ago. She'd been kidnapped and slashed by Jovan Stokes, the serial killer. Hannah guessed Tanessa was recuperating from more than just the cut on her neck, though that had left a nasty scar. Whenever Hannah saw her, Hannah felt a pang of guilt. It was partly her fault it had happened. "What do we have here, Tanessa?" Bernard asked. Hannah noticed his tone was soft. No more bad mood for Bernard Gladwin. Tanessa made it all go away. Tanessa's mouth curved downward. "It's a mess. This guy, Frank Gullieppe, was...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?